They watched you break. They waited for you to give up. They whispered in rooms you'll never walk into, convinced the storm they threw at you would drown you. But here you are, standing, breathing, staring back at a world that tried to erase you. The people who once thought they had power over you are now sitting quietly, pretending they don't notice how everything around you has shifted. Their plans collapsed, their whispers dried up, and their masks are starting to crack. This is the part they never expected to see, the silence after the storm, when the one they tried to bury rises from the debris without asking for their permission. You've felt this shift, haven't you? The way certain people stopped calling, the way others watch you but don't speak, the sudden awkwardness in rooms where you used to feel small. It's not your imagination. This is what happens when their weapons stop working. The universe has a way of exposing empty hands, and your enemies are holding nothing now but their own guilt. They didn't just underestimate you, they underestimated the quiet force behind you, the one that shaped your endurance in secret while they plotted in plain sight. Chosen ones, before we go further, pause for a moment. This message isn't just a video, it's a mirror. It's proof of what you survived and why you're still here. If you've been walking this journey with me, hit the like button and subscribe right now. Not as a favor, but as a way to send this truth further, to let other chosen ones know they're not alone. This is how we build a voice louder than the lies told about us. Now, lean in closer, because this part matters. The shift you're feeling isn't random. It's the moment after an exam, when the papers are collected and the room goes still. For years, you've been tested without a warning label. No instructions, no safety nets, just betrayal after betrayal, silence after silence. Most people don't know what that does to a soul. They think they can measure pain by numbers or research papers. But those numbers don't tell the story of nights when your heart cracked so quietly no one could hear it. Those numbers don't account for carrying losses like stones in your chest, still showing up for life even when your knees were buckling. You did what most can't. You endured without applause. You built strength in rooms no one saw. While they were mocking you, you were sharpening your character. While they were taking turns trying to break you, the universe was calibrating you. For a moment they'll never be invited to witness. This is that moment. This is the unveiling. This is why their eyes follow you now, even if their mouths stay shut. Think back to the darkest night you've had, the one where you didn't know how you'd make it to morning. That was not an accident. It was the point where everything fake fell away. The universe will sometimes strip you of everything to show you what can't be taken. That's why your enemies are so confused now. They thought they took the prize. They thought they finished the story. But you were never their prize to take, and your story isn't over. You passed a test they didn't even know you were taking. You might not have realized it then, but every humiliation, every loss, every night you cried and still stood up the next morning. Those were your answers on the paper. That was you proving to the universe you could handle what came next. What they called failure was actually preparation. What they called weakness was training. What they called your breaking point was your breakthrough. And now the atmosphere has changed. The same rooms where they laughed at you are filled with an awkward quiet. The same people who spoke against you are searching for explanations they'll never find. They're watching someone who should have been broken stand taller than before. They're watching a survivor who doesn't just survive, but emerges. That's what you are. A survivor who emerges, a chosen one who has crossed the line they built to stop you. This isn't about pity, it's about power. This isn't about endurance alone, it's about emergence. It's about you finally hearing what no one else could say out loud. You passed. You're not imagining it. You're not exaggerating. This is your reveal. This is why you've been feeling that quiet shift under your feet. The universe has been moving pieces in silence. And now it's time to tell you everything. And listen, chosen one, you've felt every word of this because it's your story. This isn't just another video you scroll past. This is the moment where everything you've endured starts to make sense. You've been hidden, misunderstood, doubted, and yet you kept going. That's why you're here right now, reading this, feeling that quiet pull inside your chest. That pull isn't random. It's the signal that the universe has been waiting to give you. If you've made it this far, you're not just curious, you're ready. Ready to hear what most people will never be told. Ready to see behind the curtain of what you've been living. Before we go deeper, take a second to anchor yourself to this moment. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and drop the number 777 in the comments as a way of saying, I'm here, I've passed, I'm ready. This isn't just an interaction, it's a declaration. When you do that, you're not just supporting this message, you're strengthening a signal that calls other chosen ones out of the shadows. Take a breath, because from here it only gets deeper. Now let's step into it together and uncover what the universe has been holding back for you. Number 1, they tried to break you, but you became unbreakable. They wanted you shattered, but all they did was sharpen you. Let's not dress it up. The people who plotted against you weren't trying to test you, they were trying to end you. They wanted your silence permanent, your light dimmed, your spirit crushed under the weight of their schemes. They whispered behind closed doors, laughed in your face when you weren't looking, and smiled while handing you knives with handles missing. And yet, look at you, still here, still standing. That's what eats them alive. They threw everything, and you didn't just endure, you emerged. You were tested in ways that most people would not survive, not just tested physically or financially, but tested in your core, tested in your identity, in your self-worth, in your ability to believe there was still something worth holding on to when the world gave you every reason to give up. Your enemies thought pain would deform you. They believed betrayal would make you bitter. They were sure that if they isolated you long enough, you'd fold under the loneliness and turn into nothing more than a hollow shell. But they forgot something crucial. Chosen ones are built differently. Ask yourself this: how many nights did you sit in silence, wondering if the pain would ever stop? How many times did you stare at the ceiling, asking yourself if you were cursed, if maybe the universe had singled you out for punishment instead of purpose? That's where most people quit. That's where most people bow down to bitterness, cling to addictions, or lose themselves in hatred. But you didn't. You kept moving forward when nothing made sense. That's the difference between you and them. They rely on easy roads. You endured the battlefield. The truth is, your enemies will never understand the weight of what you carried. They see only the surface, never the breaking points you crossed in private. Scientists say the human body can endure around 45 units of physical pain before collapse. But how do you measure betrayal? How do you measure the loss of trust, the theft of your peace, the quiet humiliation of being mocked and doubted? There's no scale for that, and yet you bore it. You carried pain that would have crushed entire communities, and still you did not surrender your soul. Imagine iron in the fire. It screams, it bends, it glows red under the flame. To the untrained eye, it looks like destruction, but to the blacksmith, it's transformation. That's what happened to you. They thought they were burning you alive, when in truth, the universe was reforging you into something they can't scratch, can't dent, can't bend. They see you're calm now, and they mistake it for luck. But you and I both know it wasn't luck. It was survival. It was the daily choice not to let their poison turn you into them. Here's what's brutal for them. Survival was never the goal. Anybody can crawl out of the fire. The real test was whether you could survive without corruption. And that's where you humiliated your enemies the most. Because you didn't just make it out, you made it out without selling your soul. You didn't become the snake that bit you. You didn't stoop to their games, even when it was tempting. They lied, and you told the truth. They betrayed, and you stood tall in your integrity. They mocked, and you stayed silent, letting the universe fight for you. Let me ask you, how many people do you know who survived their storm but came out bitter, cruel, hardened in all the wrong ways? They lived, yes, but they lost themselves in the process. That's not passing. That's failing quietly. But you were different. You kept your essence intact. You let pain mold you, not erase you. That's why you stand out now like a lighthouse in a sea of wreckage. That's why their eyes can't leave you, even when their mouths pretend they don't see you. Passing wasn't about applause. It wasn't about medals or recognition. It was about unseen endurance, the kind you live when no one's watching. You woke up on mornings when sleep felt safer than life. You held on to dignity when everyone around you wanted you to break character. That's what makes you chosen. That's what separates you from the ordinary. The test was unfair, and it wasn't supposed to be fair. It was designed to strip you of every safety net, to see if you'd still rise without crutches. And rise you did. Every false friend that left you was part of the calibration. Every betrayal was a furnace. Every silence was a classroom where the universe taught you strength in its rawest form. While others collapse under half your burden, you carried 10 times more and still held on to your integrity. That's what terrifies your enemies, because now they see the truth. They were never measuring your endurance. They were measuring your incorruptibility, and you passed with a mark they can't touch. You weren't measured against them. You weren't measured against the crowd. You were measured against your own destiny, and you proved that you're unbreakable. And here's the irony. They thought they were winning when you were crying. They thought your isolation was their victory. They thought your silence was defeat. But every tear was watering your strength. Every lonely night was proof you wouldn't sell out. Every unanswered prayer was the quiet signal that the universe was still watching, still recording, still weighing every move. And now the scorecard is in, and it's not in their favor. Chosen one, you need to hear this clearly. Passing doesn't mean you walked out untouched. Passing means you walked out uncorrupted. You carried scars, yes, but those scars are evidence. They're proof of what you endured, of the war you survived. They're proof that the enemy failed. And now every scar on you shines like a medal in the light. The enemy wanted to end you. Instead, they introduced you to yourself. They made you see what you're really made of. They made you dig into reserves you didn't know you had. And that's why their laughter has gone silent now. Because they know they gave their best shot. And it wasn't enough. You were tested beyond human measurement, and you passed. That's why you're here. That's why you're alive. That's why they can't touch you anymore. Number 2, they tried to poison your soul, but you stayed untouched. They couldn't destroy your world, so they tried to destroy your heart. They wanted your light dimmed because they knew they could never outshine it. When they couldn't beat your strength, they attacked your softness and still lost. You walked through their fire and came out carrying water for others. Let's cut through the noise. Your real battle was never about your bank account, your reputation, or even your future. Those were just distractions, decoys, collateral. The true target was your innocence. The part of you that still believes, still hopes, still loves despite everything. That's the part your enemies wanted most. They weren't satisfied with trying to break your back. They wanted to poison your spirit. They wanted you to look in the mirror and not recognize yourself anymore. Think about it. Why else would the attacks feel so personal, so surgical, like they were aimed straight at your core instead of just your circumstances? Because they weren't trying to beat you, they were trying to change you. They knew that if they could twist your heart into bitterness, if they could make you cold, suspicious, or vengeful, then they wouldn't just win a battle, they would erase the very thing that made you chosen. Imagine this. A thief who can't break into a vault stops trying to steal the gold. Instead, he poisons the water supply so that whoever drinks from it dies anyway. That's exactly what they tried to do with your soul. They couldn't touch the gold inside you, so they tried to poison the source. Every betrayal, every rejection, every smear was their poison. Every time someone lied on your name, they weren't just attacking your reputation. They were trying to inject cynicism into your bloodstream. You might have even asked yourself late at night, why does it always have to be me? Why does it feel like every loss cuts deeper than the last? That question is proof of the battle. Most people don't even realize they're in it. They think losing money or status is the war. But no, losing a job is painful but reversible. Losing trust in goodness, losing faith that kindness is worth it, that's a wound that can turn into a permanent scar. And your enemies knew it. Imagine a field of fresh snow, white and untouched. Now imagine someone walking across it with muddy boots, leaving prints everywhere. That's what they tried to do to your heart. Leave stains so deep they'd never fade. But look at you now. Yes, you've been walked on, but somehow your soul is still snow white where it matters most. That's not weakness. That's a miracle of will. That's you protecting your own essence when everything around you told you to let it go. Here's what's hard for outsiders to grasp. It takes far more strength to stay soft than to go hard. Anybody can shut down. Anybody can throw up walls. Anybody can say, I'll never trust again. But you chose the harder road. You stayed open. You kept forgiving. You kept hoping. You kept loving even when it cost you. That's the quiet victory nobody claps for, but the universe notices. Imagine iron in acid. Most metals corrode, but certain metals resist, even polish under pressure. That's what your soul did. They thought their cruelty would corrode you, but it refined you. They thought their betrayal would turn you into a cynic, but it turned you into someone wise without losing tenderness. That's the rarest kind of victory. Let's answer the doubt in your head right now. You might be thinking, but I did get angry. I did feel bitter. I did want revenge. Of course you did. You're human. The difference is, you didn't live there. You didn't build a home in that bitterness. You felt it and you let it pass. You wanted revenge, but you didn't let it define you. You were tempted to shut down, but you didn't lock the door. That's what separates you. That's why you passed. Because the real test wasn't about never feeling pain. It was about never letting pain decide who you'd become. Losing money or opportunities can be fixed. Losing your softness, your empathy, your innocence, that's far harder to recover. And yet, even after everything, you're still here with a heart that beats like it hasn't forgotten how to care. That's proof you won a war most people don't even know exists. Think about a garden. When a storm tears through, it uproots trees, flattens flowers, and leaves everything looking ruined. But some seeds survive underground, unseen, waiting for the right moment to rise again. That's your innocence. They thought they'd killed it. They thought you'd never grow again. But underneath the surface, you were still alive, still soft, still capable of blooming when the storm passed. And now here you are, blooming anyway, confusing everyone who thought you'd become a thorn bush instead of a tree. Your enemies hate this the most. They wanted you bitter because bitterness is predictable. They wanted you angry because anger is easy to manipulate. They wanted you vengeful because vengeful people destroy themselves. But you stayed unpredictable. You stayed soft without being naive. You stayed wise without being jaded. You stayed loving without being blind. That's why their attacks feel weaker now. Because the one thing they couldn't corrupt was the one thing they needed to win. Look around at people who've been through half your pain. Many survive, but lose themselves. They harden, twist, and become unrecognizable even to themselves. They think that's strength, but it's just another form of defeat. You, on the other hand, survived intact, scarred but intact, changed but not corrupted. You didn't let the poison become part of you. That's the rarest victory, and no one can take it from you. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. Your softness scares them now, because it's no longer the softness of someone naive. It's the softness of someone who's seen everything and still chooses to stay human. That's power. That's strength they can't touch. So when you wonder, why did it have to be me? Remember this. Your innocence was the battlefield because your innocence is your power. They knew if they could take that, everything else would crumble. But they failed. You walked through hell, but you didn't come out smelling like smoke. You walked through betrayal, but didn't become a betrayer. You walked through rejection, but didn't start rejecting yourself. You walked through cruelty, but didn't become cruel. That's why you're rare. That's why you're chosen. Many go through trials and survive, but they survive twisted. You survived whole. You survived with a heart that still beats for goodness in a world that tried to erase it. And that is the victory no one can take from you. This isn't weakness. This is strength on a level most people will never understand. It's easy to become a monster when monsters attack you. It's hard to stay human. You stayed human. You stayed you. And that's why your story is not just survival, it's triumph. They tried to poison your soul. You stayed untouched, and now your very existence is the evidence of their failure. Number 3. When the universe went silent, it was building a warrior. They mistook the quiet as your defeat. You learned to turn the quiet into your weapon. The silence you went through wasn't emptiness, it was an invisible battleground. While you were crying into pillows, thinking no one heard, the universe was training you in ways your enemies can't comprehend. They believed that if they cut off your support, if they isolated you long enough, you'd fold. They mistook your season of quiet for a sign of weakness. But the truth? The quiet turned you into a force that no noise can distract. Imagine a soldier who trains blindfolded, learning to move, fight, and sense without seeing. At first it feels cruel, even dangerous. But when the blindfold comes off, that soldier can fight in the dark better than others can in daylight. That's what the silence did to you. It sharpened senses you didn't know you had. It stripped you of your dependency on constant signs, proof, and reassurances, and turned you into someone who is the proof. You may have asked yourself, was I forgotten? Did I fail? Was I ever chosen at all? That's not a sign of weakness. Those questions were part of the test. Anyone can walk forward when they're being carried. It takes a chosen one to walk when it feels like no one's holding their hand. It takes a chosen one to trust the plan when the map goes blank. That silence wasn't punishment. It was strategy. The universe was calibrating you to move without noise, to sense its presence without needing constant reminders. It was removing the training wheels so you could ride into your destiny without falling every time the wind shifted. You were never abandoned. You were being built. And now, look at what's happened. Where others crumble when things go quiet, you keep moving. Where others panic when they don't see signs, you know how to read the invisible. You've become someone who doesn't just survive in silence. You thrive in it. That's the power of being chosen. The silence they thought would break you is the silence that made you unstoppable. Number 4. They didn't just attack you. They ran experiments on you. They thought you were a lab rat. You turned their lab into a graveyard for their plans. Most people think your battles were random. They weren't. Nothing about what you went through was accidental. It wasn't chaos. It was calculation. You weren't just attacked. You were studied. Every betrayal, every storm that arrived at the worst possible moment, every pattern that felt too perfect to be coincidence was exactly that. Orchestrated precision. Forces you couldn't see tracked your habits, your triggers, even the people you loved, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They weren't simply trying to hurt you, they were trying to map you. Imagine a predator circling its prey, not striking immediately, but watching, learning, cataloging every move. Imagine a hacker running tests on a firewall, probing for weaknesses before launching the real attack. That's what happened to you. They observed what made you angry, what made you despair, what made you doubt yourself. They timed betrayals to seasons of exhaustion. They tried to turn friends into weapons. And you probably asked yourself, why does it always feel so timed, so targeted? Because it was. But here's what they didn't factor in. They calculated your humanity, but overlooked your depth. They measured your fragility, but didn't measure your fortitude. They thought they were charting a pattern, but you were already being fortified in ways their metrics can't touch. That's why the setups looked perfect, but backfired. That's why the weapons formed, but couldn't finish you. They underestimated the strength that comes from being chosen. Every time you endured, you ruined their data. Every time you refused to fold, their research collapsed. You became unpredictable because you no longer moved from weakness, but from wisdom. The very areas they tried to weaponize became the areas that revealed your resilience. They studied you, but they never understood you. They thought they were documenting your breaking point. Instead, they documented your evolution. They didn't just attack you, they ran experiments on you, but you flipped the script. Their lab notes are now useless because you broke the mold they thought would hold you. And that's why you're still here. Unbroken, unreadable, and unstoppable. Number 5. They thought you collapsed, but you were being born. What they called your breakdown was actually your breakthrough. Your enemies thought your collapse was the end of your story. They saw you stagger, cry, and fall to your knees and whispered, "That's it, they're finished." But what they didn't understand is that your breaking point wasn't a burial. It was a birth. The very moment they mistook as your final failure was the exact moment the universe tore open the ground for something new to rise. Think of a seed. From the outside, it looks like destruction when the shell cracks, but that breaking isn't death. It's the only way new life can emerge. That's exactly what happened to you. You reached the limit of human strength. Your willpower, your plans, even your hope seemed to run dry. You had nothing left to give, and that was the doorway. That's where the universe stepped in and said, "Now we begin." You may have wondered, if I was chosen, why did I have to collapse? Why wasn't I spared the breaking? Here's the answer. Passing doesn't mean avoiding the breakdown. It means letting the breakdown clear out illusions, control, and weight you were never meant to carry. It means allowing the ashes to become the raw material for your rebirth. Imagine a building that looks strong but is hollow inside. Sometimes it has to be demolished so something unshakable can be built in its place. That's what happened with you. Your breaking wasn't weakness. It was the demolition of everything false so the real you could finally rise. The irony is brutal. The very moment they celebrated your destruction was the moment you became untouchable. They thought you were crushed forever, but the crushing pressed out something priceless inside you. They thought your silence was defeat, but it was the sound of your rebirth echoing underground. Not everyone survives that kind of collapse. Fewer still allow it to transform them instead of destroy them. But you did. And that's why your breaking point will always stand as your birth point. That's when the real you emerged. Stronger, sharper, and sustained by something no human hand could ever break again. Number 6. They celebrated battles, but you own the war. They mistook a few stolen moments as victory, forgetting the war was never theirs to win. Your enemies laughed when you stumbled. They threw parties when something slipped through your hands. They pointed fingers and whispered, "Look, they've lost again." To the outside world, it looked like defeat. Your reputation was dragged. Opportunities vanished. People walked away holding pieces of your story like trophies. But here's the truth they'll never admit. Those so-called victories were the height of their power and the beginning of their downfall. Imagine a boxer who brags about winning a round only to be knocked out before the final bell. That's what happened here. They were allowed to taste small wins so the world could see the limit of their reach. They could touch your possessions, your status, even relationships, but they could never touch your essence. And that's what the real war was always about. You might have asked yourself, why did I have to lose so much if I was chosen? Because without those losses, you might have believed your power was tied to what you had. The universe stripped it bare to prove your strength was rooted in who you are. Those false victories didn't expose your weakness, they exposed their ceiling. Imagine fire burning wood. On the surface, it looks like destruction, but what's left behind, pure ash, stripped of pretense, is untouchable. That's what happened with you. They thought their wins reduced you, but in reality, those moments revealed that you're unshakable even without props, titles, or applause. And here's the part that destroys them. Every time they thought they'd beaten you, you survived. Survival itself was the victory. They stole rounds, but you still stand. They won moments, but you own the ending. So let them boast about the battles. Let them replay their illusions. Because the war has always belonged to you. What they thought was triumph was just proof that their reach ends at the surface. They celebrated too soon. Because the war was never theirs to win. Number 7. They tried to mark you forever, but you walked out untouched. They wanted their damage to live inside you. Instead, it turned into proof you survived them. Scars and stains aren't the same, and that difference terrifies your enemies. Scars are evidence. I was wounded, I bled, I survived. Stains are corruption. I became what hurt me. What they wanted wasn't just to cut you. They wanted to leave a residue inside you, so deep you'd never see yourself the same way again. They wanted bitterness to set like concrete, resentment to harden into your identity, and shame to color everything you'd ever do. But here you stand, scarred, yes, but clean. Imagine white cloth torn and stitched back together. The stitching shows it's been through something, but the fabric is still pure. That's you. They tried to spill their filth onto you so it would seep into your fibers. But instead of absorbing it, you resisted. You bled and healed, but you never became what broke you. That's why your scars are so powerful. They're not a warning of contamination, but a testimony of survival without infection. You may have wondered, why do I still feel the marks? Why do I remember everything so vividly? Because scars tell a story without words. They let the world know what you endured, and also what you refused to become. They're not proof of weakness. They're proof of integrity under fire. Most people either come out of the fire untouched because they never went through it, or they come out stained because they let the fire seep into them. You're different. You walked through flames and came out with scars that shine. The pain didn't erase your light. It carved it deeper, sharper, clearer. And that's what frightens those who tried to break you. Your scars expose their failure. They meant to stain you permanently. Instead, your scars became your medals, your unshakable authenticity. This is the difference between chosen ones and everyone else. Others come out twisted. You came out true. Every scar on you declares that you were tested, but you were never defiled. Number 8. They sat in judgment and exposed themselves instead. The trap they built for you became the stage of their own downfall. They thought they were the examiners. They thought they held the clipboard, the pen, and the final grade over your life. Every trap, every betrayal, every whispered lie they designed was supposed to reveal your weakness and discredit your worth. But the moment they chose to test you, they stepped into the test themselves, and they failed. What they built to break you became the very evidence that revealed them. Imagine a hunter setting a snare in the woods, only to walk into it himself. Imagine an employer rigging an evaluation to fire an employee, only to expose his own corruption in the process. That's what happened here. They were so busy measuring your endurance that they forgot the universe was measuring theirs. Every move they made, every scheme they plotted, every cruel word they spoke was recorded, not as proof of your weakness, but as undeniable evidence of their character. You may have asked yourself, why did I have to go through this? Why wasn't it stopped sooner? Because endurance is louder than defense. Your survival became your vindication, while their behavior became their own indictment. By trying to crush you, they revealed who they really are: envious, deceptive, and willing to destroy another soul just to feel powerful. Here's the irony that cuts them deepest. What they intended as proof of your unworthiness became a mirror reflecting their own ugliness. The trap they set became the place where they tripped. Their schemes turned into a public record of their motives. The very stage where they hoped to shame you became the arena where their own cruelty was broadcast. That's why you can walk away with peace now. The victory isn't just that you survived, it's that their intentions are now written in plain sight. Your endurance testified louder than any words you could have spoken. They thought they were writing your ending, but all along the trial was revealing them. And in that revelation, their failure was sealed. Number 9. You were forged for command, not cushions. Comfort never made a leader. Fire did. Your path was brutal because it had to be. You weren't being shaped for an easy life. You were being refined for leadership. Ordinary voices echo in shallow rooms, but your voice was meant to carry weight in places where silence once reigned. And influence without depth, that's dangerous. That's why your trials came like waves, stripping arrogance, burning illusions, and chiseling humility into your bones. What others mistook for punishment was always preparation. Think about it. Why were you pressed so hard while others seemed to glide through life? Because the universe doesn't hand authority to untested hands. Leadership isn't about titles, applause, or platforms. It's about credibility. And credibility is forged in the fire no one volunteers for. You walked through valleys others avoided, and you came out scarred but intact. That's why your words cut deeper than theories, because your story is evidence. You may have asked yourself, why me? Why so much suffering? The answer is sharp, so you would know power without abusing it, so you would never dominate, manipulate, or oppress. You know too well what it feels like to be silenced and overlooked. That memory carved compassion into you that can't be faked. Imagine a sword. Comfort dulls it, but constant fire and hammering sharpen it until it can split stone. That's you. The blows weren't there to destroy you. They were shaping your edge. And now, your scars are your credentials. They are proof you paid the price for integrity when shortcuts were offered. Others chased comfort. You endured crucibles. They sought applause. You were stripped so truth, not ego, would overflow when your moment came. That's why your voice carries weight now. It isn't loud because it tries to be. It's heavy because it has survived what should have silenced it. Leadership was never about comfort. It was about refinement. And you, chosen one, were forged in fire to stand where others fall. Number 10. Isolation wasn't rejection, it was your initiation. They thought you were abandoned, but you were being initiated into knowledge they'll never touch. Your loneliness wasn't emptiness, it was an initiation. At the time, it felt cruel. Empty rooms, silent phones, no support when you needed it most. It looked like the world forgot you. But the truth? The universe didn't push you aside. It pulled you out of reach. Because chosen ones aren't validated in crowds. They're refined in isolation, where applause can't drown out lessons only the hidden place can teach. Imagine a rare diamond pulled from the earth. Before it can shine, it's locked away in darkness, cut and shaped where no eyes can see. That was you. You weren't hidden because you were unworthy. You were hidden because no audience could comprehend the training you were receiving. Loneliness wasn't punishment. It was initiation. You may have asked yourself, why was I left out? Why didn't anyone show up for me? Because you had to learn how to move without cheerleaders, how to trust without confirmation, how to stand when no one clapped for you. That's where your foundation was built. While others chased visibility, you were learning invisibility, because real power isn't shaped in spotlights. It's forged in shadows. The whispers you received there weren't lessons from books or teachers. They were secrets whispered into your spirit when you felt most raw and forgotten. That's why your perspective is different now. That's why you see what others miss. Because the silence you endured wasn't empty. It was coded with revelation. And here's the test. Would you despise the hiding or embrace it? Most people collapse in isolation because they mistake it for rejection. You didn't. You stayed long enough to realize the silence was strategy. And when you stepped out, you didn't just walk with knowledge, you walked with revelation. Now, the secrets you carry aren't just for you. They're keys that will one day unlock destinies for those who look to you for guidance. Your loneliness wasn't wasted. It was sacred training. They thought you were forgotten, but really, you were being entrusted with truths that make you unstoppable. Number 11. They mocked your fragility, but missed your fire. They saw cracks in your armor, but never noticed the unshakable force flowing through them. They miscalculated you from the start. To their eyes, your endurance looked fragile. You didn't retaliate the way they expected. You didn't put on a performance of rage or collapse dramatically for their entertainment. Instead, you moved quietly, steadily, refusing to play by their script. To them, that looked like weakness. But what they failed to see was the source of your strength. You weren't surviving on human willpower. You were plugged into a reservoir they couldn't measure, a supply they couldn't track. Imagine a lamp that looks dim to the naked eye, but is connected to a power grid stretching across continents. That was you. They judged the flicker they could see, but never considered the source keeping you alive when logic said you should have gone dark. You may have wondered, why do they keep underestimating me? Why do they treat my patience as weakness? Because their definition of strength is shallow. To them, strength is loud, aggressive, forceful, but your quiet resilience exposed a kind of power they couldn't comprehend. They saw exhaustion in your eyes, but missed the flame in your spirit. They saw the weight on your shoulders, but never noticed the invisible hands holding you up. Every time you kept walking when they expected you to quit, you shattered their assumptions. Every time you forgave when revenge was easier, you displayed authority they couldn't name. Patience wasn't passivity. It was control. Restraint wasn't fragility. It was fire. They thought they were watching you break. In truth, they were witnessing you being built. They saw a fragile vessel, but they didn't see the endless current running through it. That's why their attacks couldn't finish you. They were striking flesh, but they never touched your source. And here's the part that cuts deepest. What they mocked as weakness is now the clearest proof you were chosen, because only the chosen can look breakable and still remain unbreakable. They underestimated you because they underestimated the power behind you, and that miscalculation sealed their failure. Number 12. You carried faith. They couldn't break. Faith isn't proven in comfort. It's proven when everything collapses and you still refuse to bow. Most people only talk about faith when life is easy. They believe when the money flows, when the support is loud, when the outcome looks certain. But that's not faith. That's just agreement with circumstances. Real faith begins when comfort ends. And that's exactly where you were thrown. You weren't called to demonstrate ordinary belief. You were called to walk out unbreakable faith, the kind that refuses to die even when every sign says you're finished. Imagine standing on a bridge that vanishes with every step, yet you keep walking because something in you knows the ground will appear beneath your feet. That was your journey. You believed when believing looked foolish. You trusted long after trust stopped making sense. You held on in silence, so heavy it felt like abandonment. That's not blind optimism, that's radical trust, and it made you stand out as chosen. You may have asked, why did my faith have to be tested so hard? Why me? Because weak faith can't carry weight. You were being prepared to show a dimension of trust most people never reach. Your tears, your shaking knees, your whispered prayers in the dark. Those moments weren't signs of failure. They were proof you were still standing when logic demanded you fall. And here's the paradox that destroys the enemy. Your refusal to quit became undeniable evidence. Every step forward in the dark was a declaration that faith doesn't need proof, it needs persistence. Every unanswered prayer became testimony that your trust wasn't in outcomes, it was in covenant. This is why your story is different. You didn't just talk about faith, you embodied it until it became unshakable. You proved that faith isn't glamorous. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's raw, sometimes it's clinging to hope with nothing left but a whisper. But still, you stood. What others called irrational, the universe recognized as unbreakable. And that's why you passed. Because only the chosen can show the world that faith doesn't collapse under fire, it grows stronger in it. Number 13. The final question was love, and you answered with your heart. The real danger of suffering isn't the pain itself, it's letting that pain turn you into what hurt you. The storms, the betrayals, the humiliations, yes, they tested your endurance. Yes, they pushed your strength to the edge, but that was never the deepest exam. The real test was simpler and far heavier. After everything, would you still love? That question separates the chosen from the broken. Anyone can come out of a storm tougher. Few come out softer without losing themselves. Imagine iron placed in fire. Most metals harden and become brittle under heat. But gold stays pure. That's what you are. Pain tried to harden you. Betrayal tried to poison you. Loss tried to calcify your tenderness into stone. And yet you refused. That refusal is your miracle. You didn't let cruelty erase your compassion. You didn't let abandonment strip away your care for others. You didn't let rejection stain you with bitterness. That is rare, and that is why you passed. You may have asked, why is love the ultimate test? Because strength without love becomes tyranny. Wisdom without love becomes arrogance. Survival without love becomes emptiness. Most people collapse here. They survive the fire, but lose their humanity in the process. They come out bitter, cynical, and quick to wound others the way they were wounded. But you chose differently. Every time you forgave when revenge seemed easier, you displayed power most can't fathom. Every time you kept your heart soft when it was safer to go cold, you revealed the essence of being chosen. Love after pain isn't weakness. It's the highest form of strength. Your enemies thought the cruelty they poured into you would replicate itself through you. Instead, it stopped with you. The darkness couldn't reshape you. You broke the cycle. And that is what heaven celebrates. Not just that you survived, but that you survived with your humanity intact. The greatest miracle isn't endurance alone. It's the fact that even after everything, love still lives inside you. That's proof you are chosen. Because only the chosen can walk through hell, refuse to mirror it, and come out still capable of loving. Number 14. You stopped seeking answers. You became one. They thought you'd leave broken, but you walked out as living proof that survival can become revelation. You didn't just pass the test, you became the answer to it. Others survive trials and come away with scars. You endured trials and came away transformed into living evidence that endurance, resilience, and faith aren't theories. They're flesh and blood. You are no longer just someone telling a story. You are the story. And that reality unsettles those who thought you'd never rise again. Imagine walking into a room carrying no script, no speech, no defense, and yet your very presence speaks louder than anything you could say. That's you now. You don't have to convince anyone you've been through fire. People feel it when they meet you. They see in your scars what textbooks can't explain. Yes, the fire is real. Yes, it burns. But no, it cannot consume me. That alone makes you the answer to someone else's silent question. Can a person really live through this much pain and not lose themselves? Your life itself replies, yes. You may have wondered, why did I have to carry so much? Because the proof the world needed